Hi class. So this is a makeup video from Monday. If you missed class on Monday, please watch the entire video. If you were in class on Monday, you do not have to watch this video. You can if you want to review, but you don't have to. I'm just going to go over everything that we talked about on Monday. It's extremely important if you missed class that you watch the entire video because what we talked about today, I'm recording this on Monday, what we talked about today is extremely important for the rest of our unit. So it is very essential that you watch this video and you follow along before class on Wednesday. Otherwise, you're going to have no idea what we're talking about. So please make sure you're following along and watching this video. So I'm going to go over our learning target and our essential question, and we'll get right into it. So our learning target for today is I can define and explain the importance of mythology. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to tell me what mythology is and why it's important. Our essential question for this unit is how has mythology shaped the modern world? So we have a new unit, we're starting fresh, we have a new essential question, and hopefully you are interested in this topic. I think mythology is extremely interesting and important for our world. I think it's really important to look at other cultures and what they believe and how that has impacted our society because you probably don't know how much of our society is based or inspired by the ancient Greek culture and their mythology. So I'm really excited to share some of these crazy stories with you guys. I hope you can find some things that you want to do some independent research on or some things that you're just really interested in this unit. I think this unit will have something for everybody. So hopefully you find that to be true. So we're going to get this KWL chart done today. So by the end of this video, you'll have this KWL chart finished with, and you can turn it in for a grade. We did this in class today, and we'll do it in class right now as you're watching this video. So the first thing you need to do is open it in a tab. So you're going to have this open. So you can find this on Google Classroom. In the stream, it's the first thing that you'll see in the stream. Oh, sorry, I'm thinking about something else. So your KWL chart is actually in the classwork tab. If you go to week 15, Tuesday, December 1st, KWL chart, go ahead and click on that and open it in a new tab. It's going to make you a copy. So if you need a second, just pause on the video. So Tuesday, December 1st, KWL chart. Go ahead and click on it. And then what I would like you to do is to type your name where it says type here under name. Then we're going to do K and W. We're going to do L at the end, so wait for L. But K and W should be completed right now. I'm going to go over how to complete it, and then I want you to pause the video and actually complete it. So for K, what I know, tell me what you know about mythology. Some of you might know even more than I do because mythology seems to be something that people become obsessed with, really interested in because there's so much there. So if that's you, fill up the whole column. Let me know what you know. If you don't really know much about mythology, tell me what you think it is. Tell me what you heard about mythology. What comes to mind? Do you know someone who's interested in mythology? Have you read or watched anything based off mythology? And then for the W column, tell me what you wonder. So you can say something like, I wonder where these stories come from, or I wonder where the word mythology comes from. So anything that you wonder, there's no requirement for how many you need. Just make sure that you fill up as much space as you can. So go ahead and pause this video and finish column K and column W. Okay, so I'm going to move on, assuming that you have finished column K and column W, and we are going to get into our lesson. So if you weren't in class, I'll go ahead and tell you something that I talked about in class is how our participation grade is going to change. Before we had weekly participation grades, But now we are going to have one overall participation grade for the entire grading period. And this is important because it's going to be worth more than the weekly participation grades, and it's replacing them. So it's going to just be one participation grade, and the way that you are going to earn those points is I have a handy dandy wheel of names that I'm going to use to call on people so we can hear from a variety of perspectives and not just those people who always volunteer to share. So everyone is going to have an equal chance of being called on to share. I'll always let you know when that is going to happen, and if you are called on, what you will need to share. Just make sure that you are paying attention for when that is going to happen. So if you see something that says be prepared to share, that's a good indicator that you may be called on. So I just wanted to let you know that. And now we can talk about how you're going to take notes this grading period. So you need a notebook because there's a lot of definitions that you're going to need to keep track of for quizzes. But the good news is that you can use your notes on the quiz. So as long as you've been keeping track of your notes in a notebook, you should have no problem because you can just open your notebook during the quiz and reference that with any questions that you have. I actually created a digital notebook for you guys. So I'm going to show you how to access that. If you go to the Google Classroom stream, it's this first post here. It says, I've decided to provide you with a digital notebook to keep track of notes. You'll be able to use this notebook on any test. Before class, please make a copy. So what you're going to do is you are going to open this. When you have it open, you're going to make yourself a copy. This is my copy. You need your own copy. So I'm going to show you how to do that. If you go to File, Make a Copy, Entire Presentation. Then once you've made yourself a copy, you can change the name. It's going to say copy of, make a copy. Change the name, move it to your English folder, star it if you want to, so you have easy access in your starred folder on Google Drive. And then you can change the cover if you would like to. And then this will be your notebook. So it's not for a grade, but it is important because if we go to have a quiz and you haven't been updating your notebook, then it's not going to be helpful to you and you're just going to have to remember everything that we've talked about this grading period. So it's really important to keep track of this notebook, and I've made it really easy for you guys for this first week by giving you guided notes. So make sure that you, at the end of this video, have filled in slides 2 and 3. So you're going to fill in all these blanks today. And then on Wednesday, we're going to fill in slide 4 and 5. And then after that, with the following weeks, you'll just add pages and keep notes by yourself. So I'm helping you this week by giving you guided notes, but next week and the weeks following, you're going to keep track of notes by yourself. However, I will let you know if something is extremely important to write down. I'll say, hey guys, you might need to take a second and add this to your notebook. But I will not have any more guided notes for you guys. So when you go to add extra notes, you're going to add a title, add a date, and then type here. And then if you need more pages, all you have to do is right click and hit duplicate. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. So like I said, I have a little bit of a lecture about mythology, and you are going to follow along in your notebook and fill in the blanks with what I'm saying. So you'll need to watch this video and then at certain points maybe pause the video and go ahead and fill in the blanks. There, I think, is something for each slide. So after each slide, when I'm ready to move on, that may be a good place to pause and fill in any blanks. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about mythology. So what is mythology? Well, myths are stories or literary artifacts. Many myths are very, very old. For most, we don't know the origin, so we don't know necessarily where all these stories came from, but we know they're very old. and they're passed down from generation to generation, which means you would tell your kids these stories and they would tell their kids these stories. And eventually, when people started writing books, they would write down these stories. So we have Homer and Virgil to thank for writing down a lot of the Greek myths. But remember, they did not create them, they just wrote them down. So, from the days of the week to the themes of the stories we write today, so much of our society is inspired by these myths. So, if you don't know, like Thursday comes from the Norse god Thor. So, there's a lot of little examples like that of how we have been influenced by mythology. We're going to look at so many of them this grading period. So, I'm going to give you a little hint that you may want to pause the video, go back to your notebook, and fill in the blanks for this first bullet point. All right, next I'm going to move on to a working definition of myth. So most of the time when you hear the word myth, it means that something is untrue, such as you swallow 8 spiders a year. You might hear someone say, oh, that's not true, it's a myth. That is one definition of the word myth. That's not the one we're talking about. We're not talking about things that are untrue. We're talking about stories. So there are two definitions of the word myth. One means that it's untrue. One means that it's a story. We're going to focus on the definition. That means a myth is a story. And one easy way for you to remember that is that myth comes from the Greek word mythos, which means word or story. That is going to be the second bullet point in your notebook, so you may want to pause and add that. Myth comes from the Greek word mythos, which means word or story. That's going to be really important. So when you hear the word myth, I want you to think of the word story. Mythos means story. And in this picture, you can see some of the figures from mythology all around the world. So even though most people, they just talk about Greek mythology, there's mythology for every culture, every religion, every society over time has its own version of mythology. So as you can see, we have some Norse mythology, some Greek mythology, some Egyptian mythology. So we have a ton of different examples just in this one little picture. All right, next we're going to go over our working definition of mythology. Working definition means that it can change. So if we don't like this definition towards the end, we can change it based off what we've learned about mythology. So mythology is going to be a collection of myths with significance and staying power. So if you are following along in your notebook, you're going to need to head over to slide 3, and then you can come back to slide 2 for these last 2 bullet points. But head over to slide 3. I needed a whole new page for this one, and fill in the blanks as you hear them. So I want to talk about this definition. Mythology is a collection of myths, because a myth would be one story. Mythology is all the stories together. So when we're talking about Greek mythology, you may hear the story of Hades and Persephone. The story of Hades and Persephone is a myth. That's one story. But then the term mythology is going to be the collection of all of those myths. So when we're talking about Greek mythology, we're talking about all the stories about gods and goddesses, all the stories about our heroes and how they impacted the Greek society. So now we need to define significance and staying power so we know what those mean, since those are important parts of the definition. So significance means it has to be important. The story needs to be about something important, such as how the world works or how the world came to be. So it can't just be a story for fun, right? You have to learn something. It has to be meaningful. These stories are important because a lot of these myths actually teach you something about the way the world works. Maybe it teaches you a lesson, like you should be grateful for what you have. Maybe it teaches you how the world was created. Either way, these are important stories that teach you something so that your parent would think it's important to tell you the story, and you would think it would be important for your kid to know the story. The second term to define is staying power. Basically, it just means that it's told over and over and over again. So it's so important that it survived centuries. So this is a testament to the deep meaning of the functional importance of these stories and the people who hear and shape them. Only two more slides. So types of myths. So this is where in your notebook, you should be done with slide 3. You can go back to slide 2, and we're going to fill in these last 2 bullet points. So the types of myths are creation myths, pantheons, and apocalypse. So for creation myths, that's how the world was created, or the universe was created. So an example of that would be this turtle called the world turtle. And this is a myth that comes from the indigenous peoples of the United States. And basically, it says that the world is on the back of a turtle. And this is also something that you would find in Chinese or Hindi mythology as well. So a lot of these stories you might find in different cultures or different religions, but you might find similarities between them, such as this world turtle. And I really think it's important to bring up this example because even though Greek mythology is the most popular and the one that we will be focusing on, every culture has its own type of mythology. What stories are passed down that are important, that teach you lessons from that culture? So for creation myths, it would be what stories are there that tells you how the world was created? It could be something from your culture or something from your religion that lets you know how the world was created. For apocalypse, this is how the world will be destroyed. So if you've ever heard like end of the world stories, those are typically based off apocalyptic myths. So if the world is going to end in fire, if the world is going to end in a big war, whatever it is, typically these ideas that you might see in movies or books, they come from someone's myths from a different cultures. And then this one in the middle is called pantheons. A pantheon myth is a myth about a god. So basically, when you hear the term Greek pantheon, and if you look at this picture, you can see a Greek pantheon is going to be a group of gods. So when we're talking about the Greek mythology, we're talking about the gods that the ancient Greek people believed in. So they believed in multiple gods. They had a lot of different gods. And a pantheon story is going to be a story about these gods or goddesses. And then finally, characters in mythology. So for this, we're going to specifically talk about Greek mythology. But remember, mythology isn't just Greek, it's every different culture. So the two main character types in Greek mythology are gods and heroes. So gods are going to be, gods, very powerful beings. Typically, they do not live amongst humans. They might live somewhere else and be able to visit humans. And some examples of these Greek gods are here. This is not all of them. There's a lot. This is just a small portion of them. So you can use the term pantheon to describe this group of gods. We have Dionysus, the god of drink, Hermes, the messenger god. You have the main ones, Zeus and Hades. So Zeus is kind of like the leader, and Hades is the god of the underworld. Then we have Hera, who's going to be Zeus's wife, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, Ares, the god of war, Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, Poseidon, the god of the sea. So these are just a few examples of these gods and what they meant to the Greek people. So again, if you hear a pantheon myth, that's going to be a myth about one of these people, one of these gods. The other character type that's important for you to know is heroes. A hero is typically a human, but it can be a demigod, which would be a form of half human and half god. There are interactions in Greek mythology between gods and humans, and sometimes there are people who are half mortal, half god. But heroes are typically humans or demigods, And there are people who go on a journey. So Hercules, his journey, you have probably seen the movie. Achilles and his journey, Odysseus and his journey. So typically they're humans or demigods who go on some type of quest. And typically in the quest, you might battle mythological creatures. Maybe you're going to battle Medusa. Maybe you're going to battle, I'm trying to think of another one. Cyclops. Cyclops would be an example. So there's a ton of different heroes and their journeys. We're going to look at some examples of these characters and some of the stories that we read. But at this point, you should go ahead and pause the video. Make sure you've updated your notebook pages 2 and 3. You should be done with those. Okay, and once you are done updating your notebook, you can go ahead and make sure that it's saved in a place where you can easily access it and then close it. We are going to finish our notes on Wednesday. And now all that's left to do is finish your KWL chart and turn that in. So now you can fill in the L column for what you learned by watching this video. So you can go back to your notes and actually look at what you wrote down, paraphrase it, put it in your own words and put it in that L column. So once you finish writing down what you learned, go ahead and turn in the KWL chart on Google Classroom. That's going to be your first grade in Google Classroom for this term. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just show you the weekly work plan. So here's the weekly work plan. Tuesday, you just need to make sure you finish your KWL chart. On Thursday, you have some asynchronous work, which is going to be actually a really fun, I think, activity on a Google form about Greek gods. It's not going to take super long, and I think it's going to be fun. So definitely get that finished. If you want to work on it early, you can. Project Lit meeting is on Thursday. Make sure you've read Skype if you're going to go to that. And then make sure you save all of your best work and organize it in your Google Drive, because I will be deleting the assignments on Google Classroom from last grading period soon. So make sure you've saved what you want to save so you can upload those artifacts to your backpack. All right, well, that's all I have. Hopefully this video was helpful and hopefully it didn't end up being too long. But again, this is extremely important information that you need to know if you missed class on Monday. So if you made it this far, great job. You guys are awesome. If you need any help at all, just send me an email or stop by my office hours and I will be happy to help you. And that's it. So bye, guys.